by Viteris, the black voters surveyed were highly enthusiastic about the March 2024 primary. The race for Los Angeles District Attorney is being hotly contested. Incumbent DA George Gascon's efforts to implement progressive criminal justice reforms have generated pushback from within his own office, the broader law enforcement community, and some in the general public. He was the subject of at least 2 failed attempts to qualify recalls. The concerns about crime are reflected in the polling results of black voters. Nearly 1 in 4 have been victims of violent crime or have someone close to them who has been a victim. 1 in 5 black voters have personally been victims of property crime in the last 2 years. A majority of respondents feel less safe than they did a year or 2 ago, but they reject the notion that criminal justice reform has gone too far. This year, black voters will be looking for candidates who speak to the complexity of the issues as opposed to a one-size-fits-all approach. Nearly half of black voters have an unfavorable view of DA Gascon, but his challengers are largely unknown. Nearly half of the black voters are also undecided, which means there's a clear opportunity for candidates to connect with black voters. Our poll makes 3 things abundantly clear. Black voters matter. Black voters are closely following this race, and the candidates for DA have a lot of work to do. KBLA Talk 1580 is committed to the mobilization and use of the franchise to empower our audience to identify and pursue their interests in advancing equity, inclusive representation, and multiracial solidarity. For KBLA Talk 1580, I'm Dr. Nicordelai Corte. We welcome your feedback.
Not again. Oh, this ain't supposed to happen to me.
Keep rocking and keep knocking, whether you Louboutin it up or Reebokin. You see the hate that they serving on a platter, so what we gon' have, dessert or disaster?
I never thought I'd be in love like this. When I look at you, my mind goes on a trip. Then you came in and knocked me on my face. Feels like I'm in a race, but I already won first place. I never thought I'd fall for you as hard as I did. You got me thinking about our life, our house and kids. Yeah, every morning I look at you and smile. 'Cause boy, you came around and you knocked me down. Sometimes love.
Welcome back into hour 2 of RSVP with Jill Munroe here on KBLA Talk 1580. Hope you are relaxed. I'm ready to get into more trending topics and headlines. So last hour we were talking about Kevin Durant and how he feels that the critiques against him in his leadership roles are really not so much about him as an actual leader, but have more to do with the fact that he lacks charisma, in his own words, that he lacks a personality, and that, that is why people don't see him in the same light, right? So I push back, I've seen him on interviews. He's kind of funny. His clapbacks on, Twitter, X, have been funny at different points. But I do think that when I say KD lacks confidence, I think that he might have been a little shy or reserved, maybe not on the court, but off the court. I don't think he really got after it. I think that is why we came across the things. I think he struggled with trying to and wanting to present this image and stick and hold to the image that wasn't quite all the way him. And so I think that it kind of paralyzed him in moments, hence the birth of the burner accounts, because, I think a lot of people have burner accounts, whether they want to admit it or not. Not everyone, but when you know that anything that you tweet or respond to on social media is going to make news, sometimes you move differently. And I don't think at that time, he was ready for that type of scrutiny. He's now, because he got caught and all the things happened, he's been unchained, unshackled, so he can post unburdened. He has a little more freedom now. But I think initially it was a lack of self-confidence. You heard players talk about how, KD didn't seem to fully believe in his game and he had to blossom and things of that nature. Andy's disagreeing with me. I see.
100%.
Let's go.
Look, there might be a little bit of validity to what you're saying, but as far as people viewing him as a leader or not, all stems from the fact that he left OKC and went to Golden State. That's it.
But why does that not make him a leader? Because I saw something they were pointing out. They were talking about, Charles Barkley made these statements, and it's unclear if this was pre-recorded and KD was just addressing the topic or if he was, softballing it back to Charles in these comments. But as pointed out, Chuck left Philly and went to Phoenix, ring chasing to a degree, right? He also had his stop in Houston. So is it just that he left? Is it because the Warriors had already won one? I know we've had this conversation 1,000,001 times, but clearly when he got there, it was a power struggle because he was somewhat of a leader. Right? In some way.
You talking about when he was with OKC?
No, I'm talking about when he left OKC and went to Golden State.
I'm sorry. Like, you could have went to any other team in the league.
Right.
Other than the team that you actually had a 3-1 lead over.
I know.
It's like, bro, you could have ran it back at least one more time. You know what I'm saying? Then you go to Golden State and then, like, yeah, you won 2 chips, but don't nobody care about you like that. That's always going to be Steph's squad.
Yeah.
And then I guess you had an issue with that. Yeah. You thought people were going to love you like they love Steph, homie? Didn't Draymond say something? That was the Paul Pierce, actually. They don't love you like that. You know
no, Draymond just called him a B.
Like, come on, bro. Like, honestly, I felt like if he would have stayed in OKC, they could have won a chip, in my opinion. You know what I'm saying? But I guess, you wasn't feeling the way, Russell Westbrook was playing, this, that, and the third.
I think it was a lot of things. I think he wanted out of a small market. I think he wanted to be able to be, in some ways, the person that he is, the freedom that he had in the Bay, in Brooklyn. Do you think he's a runner, though? Because we've seen him since he left OKC. He's with, his 4th team?
I mean, I'm not going to indict him for what happened in Brooklyn, so I'm not going to knock him for that. It's really just the OKC move to Golden State that's going to haunt him. Is it because of
the 3-1 or because he joined a winning team? Because
both. It's because of 3-1 and it's because they were already a 73 game winning team. Like, they really didn't need you. A lot of people are going to say, "Oh yeah, they needed him." They really didn't. They won before him.
Yeah.
Without him, and they won after him.
Facts.
So, like, yeah, you're a 2-time champion, but nobody really respects those 2 chips. You would have been so much more beloved if you stayed in OKC.
Again, I feel that, but would he have been happy? I don't think so. Do you think, which championship do you think is least respected? Kevin's 2 with OKC or the bubble title?
Kevin's 2 with Golden State.
Okay. Interesting. Forensic accountant says Charles was traded to Phoenix and wasn't a free agent.
Correct.
I know. I mean, which is correct. I know, but still applies. Like, he was towards the end, in theory, the end of his career in Philly, where they were looking for new assets.
That was not the end of Charles Barkley's
career. It's not
the
end. I know it wasn't that. What I'm saying is the end of his trajectory, kind of there, as far as they were looking to move on from him and he wanted out of there. So that is why I brought it up. I mean, technically, Kevin wasn't a free agent with some of his moves either.
Well, he was a free agent.
With everyone?
With the OKC situation.
But not with Brooklyn. He asked for a trade, right? He forced a trade, right?
I'm not really too sure about that, but I mean, it was already a disaster because I know he went in there with the implications that, him and Kyrie and then the whole vaccine and everything. It was just, Brooklyn was just a bad situation.
Mess.
I'm not gonna knock KD for that situation, but I will knock him for leaving Russell Westbrook, OKC. You had the Warriors down 3-2-1. Running back at least one more time.
Well, it's so, I mean, probably the closest year is the Clippers year this year, and I still think the ghost of Clippers past will always prevent them from prevailing, but we'll see.
So, yeah, all that stuff about you not being a leader, talking about you don't have the personality, that's a whole bunch of bull jive because...
But Libras are indecisive. He's a Libra.
Okay, yeah, but
you're like, whatever.
People was rocking with you in OK. I was rocking with you at OKC. You know what I'm saying? The Thunder was a dope team to watch. You know what I'm saying? That was your team, your city. And you messed that up.
I don't think he wanted it to be. I don't think he felt it fit with him and who he was as a player.
That's
I mean,
crazy.
we could, does it take some knocks from some people on him? Yes, but I think that he wanted to stretch and grow his brand outside of that, and he always would have felt constricted in a small market that.
I guess the only thing that truly helped him, if you want to talk about stretch his brand and all that, was going to the Bay and investing in Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
Other than that, from a basketball perspective, people respect your game, but they don't respect those two chips.
Do you think that they would have, if he would have stayed in OKC and not won anything, do you think it would have been any more respect? I don't think it would have mattered.
I think the respect level would have been through the roof. Just like Dame, people respect Dame for wanting to stick it through with Portland.
But Dame lost so much money and so much face time. Listen, when we come forward, we'll have more on this topic. We're going to get into Floyd Mayweather Jr.'s comments about Diddy. And some people are like, I don't know. Maybe you should have stayed out of that one. We'll get into that on the other side. All of that and more. You're locked in with RSVP with Jill Munroe on KBLA Talk 1580.
RSVP with Jill Munroe is your go-to show for staying in the know. More engaging conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
Climate is king.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we believe that caring for the community means caring about the climate. You might have heard that we announced a pretty bold 12-month, $2 million campaign to do 4 things. Increase climate literacy, turn up the volume on communities of color in the climate conversation, connect everyday people with the resources they need to survive and thrive, and highlight frontline climate justice crusaders of color throughout this year. KBLA Talk 1580 will be bringing you insightful interviews on all of our shows to help raise your climate IQ. Each quarter this year, we will also be hosting free climate events in various communities throughout the city with food, fun, and forward-thinking conversations. Thanks to partners like LADWP, Metro, Caltrans, the Sierra Club, the California Community Foundation, the California Endowment, AQMD, MWD, and more. You'll also be hearing more about a couple of national town halls broadcasting live from Los Angeles, to which you will be invited. And we'll be rolling out a robust social media campaign on all our platforms, as well as an outdoor media campaign, all designed to educate, enlighten, and empower you in our fight for climate justice.
We want cleaner air.
Caring about the community means caring about the climate. At KBLA Talk 1580, we believe that we really can change the world if we care enough. If we're the ones disproportionately impacted by these climate catastrophes, why should we be silent? Turning up the volume all year long on the climate conversation for KBLA Talk 1580. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 believes in community empowerment through the arts. Tia Chucha Central Cultural is on a mission to transform community in the Northeast San Fernando Valley and beyond through ancestral knowledge, the arts, literacy, and creative engagement. The Northeast San Fernando Valley has a population of about 500,000, the size of the city of Oakland, yet it has no bookstores, art galleries, or full-fledged cultural spaces until Tia Chuchas opened its doors in 2001. Founded by renowned poet and activist Luis Rodriguez, Tia Chuchas Cultural Center provides a year-round free or low-cost arts and literacy bilingual intergenerational programming in mural painting, music, dance, writing, visual arts, healing art sessions, and healing talking circles. Activities also include Mexica, Aztec dance, indigenous cosmology, philosophy, and 2 weekly open mic nights, one in Spanish, the other in English. In addition, they host author readings, film screenings, and art exhibits. To express yourself, heal yourself, attend an event, or volunteer, please visit www.tiachucha.org. That's TIACHUCHA.org. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Hey, keeping you informed, entertained, and always ahead of the curve. This is RSVP with Jill Munroe on KBLA Talk 1580.
You are locked into RSVP with Jill Munroe here on KBLA Talk 1580. So let's wrap up on KD. He said, I don't feel like I want people to call me a leader, but I also don't want people to say I'm not one either, because they don't see what goes on behind the scenes of what I talk about or my intentions or my relationships that I've built with my teammates. So, I mean, what he's saying is you guys don't know the work that he's doing behind the scenes. You don't know the conversations that are being had. You don't know what kind of motivation. You don't know what kind of teammate he is, you know, in short order. And, I mean, that is true. He also added, when guys say that, I just chalk it up to them not being aware. They push a narrative for myself or expose the truth on how great of a leader I am. I don't feel like that's necessary. I just chalk it up to people not being aware of who I really am. You know, Katie, perhaps. Andy?
I mean, I'll give him credit for that last part. You know, not a lot of people are going to see, you know, what goes on behind the scenes. I'll give him that. But everything else that he said, cap.
You know, he was also asked, was he unhappy as a person? Because, you know, as I brought up, he always seems to be on the move or, you know, looking out the front door, as Main Source said back in the day. Old school hip hop reference there. He said, there are times when I'm unhappy. That's just human nature. We don't play well as a team. I'm not happy. It may not last for a long time, but I'm not happy for a good 4 or 5 hours. He said, when I call his business partner Rich after a bad game, I'm not happy. Once you accept that we have normal human emotions or reactions, it'll go a lot better for people. Of course, my life is good. Of course, I can't complain about anything. But in the moment when stuff happens, I'm not going to fake like I'm not upset about it because I'm living such a great life. No, I want this to work out. Sometimes you being upset helps you figure out a problem. And I mean, I think that's fair. We talk about the lack of effort that we saw in the All-Star game. We talk about guys not caring. You do want guys to still care. So I'm not mad that he gets upset if they're losing or whatever. And you can't say that KD doesn't go on the court. I mean, we saw him carry Boston a couple of times by himself, just put them on his back. I mean, I'm sorry. My bad. Brooklyn, the B teams, you know, whatever. East Coast, who cares? No, joking. Really joking. But no, he put Brooklyn on his back, especially with the drama with Kyrie and was he in, was he out, the head coaching situation where Steve Nash was in and he kind of didn't really know what he was doing, probably much better suited as a consultant where he was. And then Jack Vaughn took over and, you know, just things happen. Listen. Things happen. Thomas Outlaw in the chat says, is it wrong to call Kevin Durant the Carmelo Anthony 2.0 model? A Hall of Fame pure shooting talent who's the top dog in the room? I mean, I think that was a comparison early, but Melo never won any titles. I mean, and very unfair, but what it is. And I think their approach, like whereas Melo doubled down and signed those extra years when it could have allowed him some flexibility and the chance to get out, the other guys in his draft did not, and allowed them to move around. And I think it hampered Melo after that. He never really got into lockstep and rhythm with the places that he's gone, just because sometimes the game is the game, and that's just what happens.
Yeah, I think the difference between him and Melo is just KD had literal chances of, you know, winning the chip, as opposed to Carmelo. The closest opportunity he had was in 2009 against the Lakers, Western Conference Finals, when he was with Denver. And then, you know, he forced his way to New York and really, not much came out of New York.
So, I mean, legend, but, 7, but really, and are the Knicks cursed? Because didn't we start off this season talking about the Knicks quite a bit? I feel like we did. We talked about Jalen Brunson and things that were going to happen or whatever, and they went on that little winning streak with the Lakers put down, and it's kind of been quiet for them since.
They balling, though. They're in great position in the East. They just need Julius Randle to come back. I think they're going to make some noise.
You think so?
100%. I mean, they're making noise now.
Are they, though? I'm just playing. I mean, a little bit. We'll have to see. We will have to see. But, shout out to KD. Like he dropped, we played his verse from his song with Staley last night. And it is very, neo-soul-ish, I suppose. KD's an interesting one, though. I'm curious to see how many years do you think KD has left in the league? And do you think that he ends it all in Phoenix?
He probably has a good 5 more years. I think he should stay in Phoenix. I don't think he should move anymore. It's no need to. You got Booker with you. Phoenix is a popping city. You know what I'm saying? It's a hot market. I think you should stay.
I feel like, it's so interesting to me because even they talked about Draymond slighting KD on the alternate cast of the NBA All-Star game the other night when he said basically there are only 2 players in the league that don't have anything else left to prove, and that's that's LeBron and Steph. And people felt like it was a slight by leaving KD off.
I agree. I think KD does have a lot to prove. I do think that KD needs to win a chip outside of Golden State.
I don't know if that will happen.
Well, sorry, KD.
And I feel like as much as KD's done, as gifted as a player as he is, I don't think that he will be revered when it's all said and done.
I agree.
Like some of his peers.
I agree. Didn't he pose a question, why am I not in the GOAT conversations too? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm sorry, bro. If you would have stayed at OKC and won a chip there, potentially, maybe. But, riding on the backs of Steph, Clay, and Draymond, even though you were the best player on the team, even though you did get those 2 final MVPs, nah, sorry.
Well, we'll have to see what happens. I do think that when it goes down, though, unfortunate or not, KD is just overshadowed, especially when you look at, it's been more than 10 years at this point. You think about, the Heatles and that run, and KD was, young pup. Obviously, we got to see him in that finals with them. And,
That's my point. They were a legit squad.
They were a legit squad, but because they were young, it just, James went. Obviously, he wanted to be a starter. There was no fit for him.
That was management. They messed that up. Because they could have chose between Harden and Ibaka, but I understand the value of a big man, so they decided to let Harden go. I know they regret that decision.
Maybe I think it would have come a point that they were going to have to relieve that anyway. And I think, from that point, it just never really, because KD and Russ's approach and attitudes were so very different. I think there was a period of time when they were on the same page, but something happened. And, I don't know, maybe it was a teammate that was there that was no longer there that kind of maybe was the piece that fit in between that could keep that balance for them. But I think it was off from there, and it just kind of the last decade or so he's been overshadowed by LeBron and Steph and what's been going on as far as with them.
You know what I hate as a basketball fan over the years? I understand youth and wanting to be like your own man. You want to get that bag. But I feel like sometimes these individuals, they miss out on potential championships that could lead them to bread, right? So I think about Kevin Garnett and Stephon Marbury. Mm-hmm. They could have been something big time. I think about T-Mac and Vince Carter when they were together with Toronto. Y'all really could have been something. And, of course, KD and Russ. I mean, you guys were on the brink.
But Toronto didn't want to pay T-Mac.
I understand that. But I'm just saying, if they just was like, you know what? I'm going to still ride this out or whatnot. I feel like the bag was going to come, especially if they were going to win, you know?
I feel that, but then at the same time, you know, I've heard players talk about, you know, get your money now. These teams aren't going to
Understood.
wait for you.
Understood.
And you give these teams breaks and deals, and then they just, you know, move on without you and say it's business, and you're left without your bread, and those opportunities don't swing back around.
You know, a player like T-Mac would have found his way, though. You know what I'm saying?
Facts. His time in Orlando seems so wasted because he was, you know.
Yeah, because he was waiting on Grant Hill and Tim Duncan.
Yeah, lots of things. You know, we just move around. Okay, so let's get into this Floyd story because it's interesting. You know, Floyd, in a recent interview, he came out and shared his thoughts about Diddy and what's happening with him. And surely it's going to raise some eyebrows because his stance was that even if his daughter was involved in a similar situation, you know, again, he's not justifying it. He's saying that things are wrong, but that he would look at the choices his daughter made to lead her to that position. So let's hear what Floyd had to say.
Even like P. Diddy, I'm not going to speak bad about P. Diddy because he's still a black man. Mistakes happen, and I can't say if it is or it's not a mistake, but things happen in life. And P. Diddy business is P. Diddy business. It's not my job or anyone else's job to go on the internet and stump him and kick a man while he's down. My take on it is it's not my business. I don't think it's right at all, and I don't condone it. Even if that happened to my daughter, I would be hurt. But that's a choice that my daughter made.
Yeah.
So I don't want to kick nobody while they're down.
I think the big thing, because I have girls too, is though.
No boys?
I have a boy too.
Okay.
Is one, if your son is in that position or your son is accused of those things that Diddy was accused of, like, I'm going to believe in my son and what he says, but I'm going to check him about that. I'm going to check him about whether or not these are things you've done. I'm also going to check him about putting himself in those positions. And on the other side that we have to be very careful of, especially when talking about women, is that if those things are true, right, and some of the things are true,
yes,
that wasn't a decision they made, right? That's something that was done to them. And I wasn't in those rooms, so I can't cast aspersions on Diddy and say that he did it or he did do it or he's an evil man or he is. What I am saying is if those things happen to those women, not
yes,
only is it not right, it's also not their fault.
Mm-hmm.
So there's, you know, a lot to unpack. The other voice that you heard was Ryan Clark of The Pivot. That's where the interview took place. Listen, when we come forward, we're going to address it because I do think that we are at a time where innocent until proven guilty is out the window. And though there are situations where I certainly understand, is that a good space for us to get into? So we'll get into that and more of the details, plus more trending topics and headlines. You're locked into RSVP with Jill Munroe on KBLA Talk 1580.
I hear myself say, y'all go ahead. I think I'm gonna kick it with my girl today. I used to be commander-in-chief for my pimp ship flying high. Till I met this pretty little missile. It shot me out the sky. Oh, shot me out the sky. To know I'm crashing. Don't know how it happened, but I know it feels so damn good. Said if I could go back and make it happen faster. Don't you know I would, baby, if I could.
Trending topics and the hottest happenings. You're listening to RSVP with Jill Munroe on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Amber Payton. Here's the latest on the Black Information Network. The mayor of Atlanta is running for a second term. Andre Dickens announced his re-election campaign to reporters, saying he loves being the mayor of Atlanta and has wanted the job since he was 16 years old. Dickens, who is black, first became mayor back in 2021, defeating Felicia Moore with more than 60% of the vote. Dickens says he's up for the challenge of re-election and hopes to continue his goals of bringing more affordable housing to the homeless in Atlanta. The mayoral election is in 2025. Atlanta voters will have a chance to decide on whether or not to increase a 1-cent sales tax this spring. The city council voted to put the measure on the ballot in May, which would provide more money for water and sewer improvements across the city. Former Mayor Shirley Franklin, who is black, first led the way on the penny tax for water 2 decades ago. That's the latest. I'm Amber Payton on your home for 24/7 News, the Black Information Network, and BINnews.com.
Can't wait weeks for your tax refund? Then don't. At Jackson Hewitt, get money today if you're approved for a no-fee refund advance loan on a prepaid card. Book today at jacksonhewitt.com. No-fee refund advance offered to eligible clients. Application required. Loans by Republic Bank. Details at jacksonhewitt.com.
I'm Dr. Nicolai Corte with the KBLA Talk 1580 editorial. In a public opinion survey commissioned by KBLA Talk 1580 and conducted by Viteris, the black voters surveyed were highly enthusiastic about the March 2024 primary. The race for Los Angeles District Attorney is being hotly contested. Incumbent DA George Gascon's efforts to implement progressive criminal justice reforms have generated pushback from within his own office, the broader law enforcement community, and some in the general public. He was the subject of at least 2 failed attempts to qualify recalls. The concerns about crime are reflected in the polling results of black voters. Nearly 1 in 4 have been victims of violent crime or have someone close to them who has been a victim. 1 in 5 black voters have personally been victims of property crime in the last 2 years. A majority of respondents feel less safe than they did a year or 2 ago, but they reject the notion that criminal justice reform has gone too far. This year, black voters will be looking for candidates who speak to the complexity of the issues as opposed to a one-size-fits-all approach. Nearly half of black voters have an unfavorable view of DA Gascon, but his challengers are largely unknown. Nearly half of the black voters are also undecided, which means there's a clear opportunity for candidates to connect with black voters. Our poll makes 3 things abundantly clear. Black voters matter. Black voters are closely following this race, and the candidates for DA have a lot of work to do. KBLA Talk 1580 is committed to the mobilization and use of the franchise to empower our audience to identify and pursue their interests in advancing equity, inclusive representation, and multiracial solidarity. For KBLA Talk 1580, I'm Dr. Nicolai Corte. We welcome your feedback.
JP Morgan Chase is building on the investments in California to help close the racial wealth gap and build a more equitable future. Visit jpmorganchase.com/racial equity and get the tools to help reach your financial goals.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. Legal Aid Foundation of Los Angeles is a nonprofit law firm that protects and advances the rights of the most underserved, leveling the playing field and ensuring that everyone can have access to the justice system. Every year, LAFLA provides free, high-quality legal services to more than 100,000 people living in poverty across greater Los Angeles. Their unique combination of neighborhood offices, self-help centers at courthouses, and domestic violence clinics puts Legal Aid Foundation of Los Angeles on the front lines in vulnerable communities and at the forefront of change. LAFLA's expert team of attorneys, paralegals, and support staff works to provide direct representation, offer counsel and advice, provide referrals, and educate the community about their legal rights through workshops and seminars. With locations all over LA, you can access their services or volunteer to help no matter where you live. And if you have an urgent issue, call 213-235-0060. That's 213-235-0060. To get legal help, make a donation, or volunteer, visit lafla.org. lafla.org. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Eggs are a staple in our diets, and there's only one egg with more delicious farm fresh taste plus superior nutrition. Eggland's Best. with more vitamins, including 6 times more vitamin D and 10 times more vitamin E, plus 25% less saturated fat than ordinary eggs. Available in so many delicious varieties: classic, cage-free, and organic. Eggland's Best. Better taste, better nutrition, better eggs.
Substance use disorder and addiction is so isolating. And so, as a Black woman in recovery, hope must be loud. It grows louder when you ask for help and you're vulnerable. It is the thread that lets you know that no matter what happens, you will be okay.
When we learn the power of hope, recovery is possible. Find out how at startwithhope.com. Brought to you by the National Council for Mental Wellbeing, Shatterproof, and the Ad Council.
Curating the most compelling stories and delivering them straight to your ears. You're listening to RSVP with Jill Munroe on KBLA Talk 1580.
Right.
It may sound crazy, but I wanna go outside.
Welcome back into RSVP with Jill Munroe here on KBLA Talk 1580. I do not want to go back outside in the rain, but unfortunately, that's just the way the things go. That is such a classic song. Shout out to Keith Sweat, too, in his version of it. Listen here, listen here. Before we get back to the Floyd Mayweather topic, I just want to take a moment. It was just announced that Hydea Broadbent has passed away. If you are unfamiliar with her story and who she was, it's been about 20 years since she appeared on a Nickelodeon special with Magic Johnson to talk about the world AIDS crisis. And at the time, she was HIV positive as a 7-year-old little girl, I believe she was. And it was soon after Magic had made his diagnosis. And it was a special. Basically, we know that Magic ushered in a more mainstream conversation about HIV and how it can be obtained and who can it infect. Hydea was another face for children. It started with, I believe his name was Ryan. Can't remember, a young white boy's name. But Hydea was a young black girl from Southern California, and we knew that she had gotten ill over the past couple of months. And so I just saw on Instagram that she unfortunately succumbed to the effects of HIV. So I just wanted to take a moment to, you know, send love and light to her family and prayers. She was 40 years old, and we didn't know what to expect when she was first introduced to us. She was a strong young lady, always an advocate. The last time she was on Instagram, social media, was last September, I believe. So, you know, just sending thoughts and prayers to her family and to anyone who is, you know, touched by her life, her death, or HIV and AIDS. So that is just a moment, and, you know, sending lots of love to her. So back to this Floyd topic. Kendi in the chat, he got after it. He said, Floyd is 100% right. Cassie was not and is not a baby. She is a grown woman. If you truly believe women are equals, you cannot infantilize when it's rhetorically convenient. So listen, I understand what you're saying. And, you know, that is a conversation that comes up when we talk about situations, especially involving domestic violence or abuse and things of that nature, because at some point there is a choice to stay or go, but there's also psychological factors. And that's why for some, it's hard to have the conversation, especially if you are dealing with someone that is going through that per se, and maybe you've tried to help them leave a number of times, or you've listened, you know, informed things. Sometimes people get not survivor's fatigue, but something like that. I know it's something fatigue, and it has to do with, you know, being a support system for people that were in, you know, that are in those type of situations. And at a certain point, it's not that you don't have the empathy to extend, but it runs out. People tire, and you know, it's a hard thing, because some people look at situations and like, well, you could really just leave. We think about the things that Diddy was accused of, and people say, well, but you finally did leave, so really, you could have just left. You know, it's a complicated thing. Just pray for healing all the way around. I do have an update for the Diddy case, but I did think that it was interesting that Floyd took the position that if it happened to his daughter, and maybe he feels that way because his daughter just went through a legal situation where I'm sure that his influence helped her out, but ultimately it was a situation that she put herself into. You know, she has a young son by NBA Youngboy, and NBA Youngboy has not been a model father thus far. Floyd has made hints that, you know, he would pay to have him go away. He really cherishes his grandson. But his daughter got into a situation with a young lady that also was dealing with NBA Youngboy, where she stabbed her or something. They had a fight. Believe she was convicted of some type of assault. At any rate, you know, her choice, but the consequences behind that, lifelong. Like we talked with Chris Brown about, for a moment of not being able to control your emotions. But again, you know, whereas Diddy, we're talking about someone who, at this point, you know, he's not being charged with any crimes. These are all civil suits. We know he's paid some amount of money to Cassie. What will happen with these others, we will see. Shout out to Forensic Accountant, who is always going to keep us up as far as our knowledge and history. So we played, who was that version of Go Outside, the original? Is it the Dramatics? The Dramatics, okay. He said, rest in peace, Tony Hester, a writer who kept his publishing. Urban Spencer says, okay, Cadillac Music. Tony Hester wrote all of the Dramatics hits of the early 70s. And Urban Spencer says, I hope we talk about Tiffany Red and the songwriters publishing is being taken by big names. Oh, Urban Spencer, you forgot to listen to me last night. It's okay. It's there for you. That's why you download the app and you can get past episodes, or you can go check out the episode on YouTube. It was hour 2 of last night's show. We did talk about that and talked about how the music industry is changing as far as its business model as a whole. The thing that happens with music publishing is that sometimes you sign a publishing deal early on and they give you this amount of money as an advance for the expectation of what they believe that your songs can earn. But within that, to get that advance, right, you're giving up some control of where your song ends up, how it is marketed for these funds in advance. And then there's the term of, there are several people that may have held on to their publishing, but do they know what to do with it? Can they get it to these soundtrack supervisors to get it into these films? What does it do for them holding on to it in such a way? you know. But again, we talked about that last night, so make sure you check out that show and send me your comments. I would love to hear it. You guys know I love feedback. When we come forward, I'll give you an update on the motion that Diddy has filed about the case that was filed against him, Harv Pierre, and an unnamed individual regarding a 17-year-old girl who was from the Detroit area who alleged that she was assaulted at his daddy's house recording studio in the early 2000s. So we'll get to that story on the other side. You're locked into RSVP with Jill Munroe on KBLA Talk 1580.
Infusing a sense of fun and entertainment in every episode. You're listening to RSVP with Jill Munroe on KBLA Talk 1580. More when we come forward.
I started vaping my freshman year of high school, mostly because all my friends had vapes. I wanted to fit in with them and look cool and be a part of everything that they were doing. The hardest part about quitting for me was all my friends still hitting their vapes right next to me. It was really frustrating and confusing when I was trying to quit because in my head I knew I didn't want to do it anymore, but for some reason my brain still wanted it.
No quit story is the same. For free support, text Kick Nicotine to 66819 today.
If you love to travel, Capital One has a rewards credit card that's perfect for you. With Venture X, earn unlimited double miles on everything you buy and turn everyday purchases into extraordinary trips. Plus, receive premium travel benefits like access to over 1,300 airport lounges where you just check in and chill out. Open up a world of possibilities with Capital One. What's in your wallet?
Terms apply. Lounge access is subject to change. See CapitalOne.com for details.
If you're looking for the most epic place on Earth, let's start at the base of a massive waterfall. Then trek through the thick jungle. Then climb to the peak of a snowy mountaintop. Then once you get there, keep going. Because with intelligent 4x4 and 7 drive modes and a Nissan Pathfinder, the search is the real adventure.
Available feature. Intelligent 4x4 cannot prevent collisions or provide enhanced traction in all conditions. Always monitor traffic and weather conditions.
Climate justice, climate equity, climate resilience. By any other name, we demand environmental justice in 2024 and beyond. We're KBLA Talk 1580, and we don't black down. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA reminds you that when we fight, we win, and we don't black down. LA Community Action Network, or LA CAN, was formed in 1999 when 25 residents of downtown LA came together and acknowledged the problems that existed in their community and made a commitment to do something about those problems, to stand together, organize, and become a force in the community that demands change. Civil rights and preventing the criminalization of poverty are their core projects. In addition, they take on women's rights, the human right to housing, and healthy food access. LA CAN also has projects focused on economic development, civic participation, voter engagement, and community media. While downtown LA remains their home base, with a particular emphasis on the Skid Row community, in 2007, they expanded their housing and healthy food access work into South Central Los Angeles. LA CAN believes that power for low-income people and people of color is achieved through a large, active, and well-informed member base that utilizes a multitude of methods to advance their messages and goals. If you'd like to join the Los Angeles Community Action Network and organize people to fight back against oppression, please visit cangress.org. That's cangress.org. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Now back to more captivating conversation on RSVP with Jill Munroe.
You were locked into RSVP with Jill Munroe here on KBLA Talk 1580. So I mentioned that Diddy filed a recent motion in relation to the case, well, one of the cases that Floyd Mayweather was referencing. So essentially, we know that this is a alleged incident that happened in 2003. The motion that Diddy filed is basically saying to the court that he feels the lawsuit is in violation of his constitutional rights as a defendant because the accuser has waited so long to make the accusations. So Rolling Stone obtained a copy of the motion that was filed, and it said that the timing of the lawsuit The plaintiff's decision to wait more than 2 decades to file her complaint has prejudiced the defendant, as he has lost the ability to defend himself fully and fairly in this action. For example, some or all evidence that otherwise would have been available if the action had been promptly commenced would be unavailable, lost, or compromised. He also stated that he never participated in any gang rape and has never participated in, witnessed, or was in present or aware of any misconduct, sexual or otherwise, relating to the plaintiff under any circumstances whatsoever. He also adds that the photo being presented of Jane Doe sitting in his lap is being presented out of context as well and should be thrown out. So I do have to say that I do wonder, again, it's a civil suit, so the burden of proof is much lower, but how do you have evidence in something that happened 20 years ago that no one, in theory, was aware of that took place? If you do say you saved your clothing or the underwear from that night, after 20 years, we don't know where it's been. We don't know, unfortunately, where you've been. Do you know what I'm saying? There's certain details that can't be verified based on, accurate, I guess, witness interrogation. I'm not sure. It's a very touchy thing because I understand why it was opened up, but I also am very clear about why the legal side, or should I say formal criminal charges, were not attached to this order because the burden of proof is so hard to reach. And with no physical evidence, it just makes for a very complicated situation. Again, I pray for healing for this young lady if this event did occur, and if somehow some elements of it are being misconstrued. Honestly, there's no way you really come back from that, because no matter what happens, there is always going to be a certain segment of people that believe that you did it. And we have to be comfortable with that. Do you know? We have to be comfortable with where we are, that someone's word, again, and it's a tricky thing because I don't want to say that any woman should not be believed, but I am an adult and I am a realist, and I have come across too many people in life to say that I absolutely believe everyone who puts themselves in a victim category. And that's not being a pick-me, that's not siding with men. I am very much for women, but I also try to be objective and look at things from a bird's eye view and then go in. But we'll have to see. She says that she has overwhelming evidence. For me, it would have to be more than just a photograph of being associated with that person, because there's a lot that can happen in between there. So we'll see what happens and how this works out for Diddy and what the best approach will be. I can't say that I do not understand Floyd's perspective. I don't know if he should have said it, but I guess, if that is honestly how he feels, he should feel comfortable in putting that out there. And again, that is not saying that I feel any action should happen to Diddy before he is convicted of something. I just think that is a dangerous slope when we get into that, because ultimately we know what our odds are and what we face. And when I say we, I'm talking Black people as a whole when we go into the legal system, no matter what. And so I think that when we start jumping on, yep, he did it, he's guilty across the board, because you have to extend, I guess, the protections to everyone including maybe some that are unjustly deserved, in order to assure that the most innocent of us all is covered. And I think it's important that we remember that, because when it all comes down, these things that, it doesn't matter, it doesn't concern us, it doesn't have anything to do, with us regular people, it ultimately does when we're talking about the legal system and those trickle-down effects. So those are my thoughts on that. Again, I told you that when it first broke out that this case would be much different from Cassie's because he is fighting it. There's still a discovery process. We might not see anything as it relates to an actual trial or, some of the more of the details, I guess, that people are interested in till much later in the process, if at all. So, listen, speaking of situations legal, Tamika Foster Raymond, I don't think that she's dropped the Raymond yet, even though Usher has a new wife, is on a new show, Bold and Bougie, and she is opening up about the liposuction procedure that she had in 2009 that almost cost her life when she had a heart attack while she was being administered anesthesia for the surgery. If you recall, she went to Brazil for this surgery, right? And the plastic surgeon that was scheduled to perform her lipo said that, he shared at the time that she was put into a medically induced coma. And at the time, they said that it was the general anesthesia that caused her to do that. Listen, in 2009, with Beverly Hills being the plastic surgery capital of the world, realistically, and money not being an object, I have always wondered why she was dipping off to Brazil. Not that people, we see lots of plastic surgery tourism now, and it's much more popular, but then not so much. So I figured she was maybe trying to keep it quiet, keep it low. But she, again, talked about it, and she says, when an attack like this happens, the doctors put the patient to sleep and make sure that everything is okay and there's not been any damage. This is the protocol that was done. She was in ICU the following day. She dealt with one of the specialists, and, she spent about a week in recovery. She said that now, though, no matter what, she believes in the all-natural approach, and that is what is best to her. Even though she felt the pressure, I guess she said, of, the commentary regarding she and Usher, her being older, her looks were especially critiqued during that time frame. I always wonder when people head out of the country for these surgeries, if they think about the fact that if anything goes wrong, how far away from home they are, what the different standards of health care are, that your insurance, it's cheaper, but there are also things post-care and for your family that can happen that when you're in another country is vastly different. Also, the bills, it's an elective surgery, but over here, they're going to let you go home if you can't pay your medical bills. In some other countries, you could end up in jail. I don't know. I just don't know if people really, and I'm not against plastic surgery at all. I say do what makes you happy, but I really don't think that people really look through the whole thing from start to finish, soup to nuts, when they get involved in stepping into those situations, really. When we come forward, we're going to have more trending topics and headlines. We're going to get into Nicki Minaj wanting Cat Williams to join her tour. Is this a good idea? Plus the resurgence, kind of a boomerang effect for Black comedy with the fallout from Cat and Monique. We'll get into that, plus more trending topics on the other side. You are locked in to RSVP with Jill Munroe on KBLA Talk 1580.
I know I'm gonna see a better day. Right now I think I'm crying because of you. I'm crying. Don't want you to see me cry. Let me go, let me go, let me go. In the rain,
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Amber Payton. Here's